sure what the three-act structure is? Are you looking for a really quick explanation in plain English? Then you've come to the right place. Hi, I'm Tobi Doyle. I'm with the Intensive Genre Workshops, and we're going to talk about the three-act structure, or what I should have remembered if I paid attention in 7th grade. Basically, this three-act structure was pinned to the bulletin board in middle school, and I never understood it or believed that people actually used it. But in fact, they do. All it says is that good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's totally formulaic, right? But we actually, as human beings, our brains are very happy that way. Things to know. In a story, stuff happens, our character reacts, they make decisions and do stuff to reach their goal. The antagonist reacts, does stuff, and that just keeps repeating. During this, our character grows emotionally and changes, unless it's a bad story or literary fiction. People like things in threes, so it's a three-act structure. And for the love of God, give the character a logical reason to want their goal, and give the antagonist a real reason to prevent the character from reaching their goal. But that'll be covered in a different workshop on goals, motivations, and conflicts. The breakdown. First of all, it's a guideline, not a rule. So the first act is about the first quarter of your book. We've got the characters introduced in their normal world, and it typically ends on a problem that rocks their world. The second act is the middle half of the story. During the second act, our main character is working towards their goal and being thwarted by antagonistic forces. Then there's a climax that leads the story into Act 3. Act 3 is the last part of the story, typically about a quarter of the book. During the third act, our main character fails. We have an all is lost moment. Then our main character regroups and tries again. There's a victory or a tragedy, and their new world is revealed. Let's look at story structure versus character arc, because both should happen in your story. I love this image from jenniferhaskin.com. Basically, it shows a dude that sees a castle. He decides he is going to fight the dragon. He has victory over the dragon and becomes the new king. That's the plot. That's what happens in the movie. But when we're looking at a character arc, we're looking at how that character changes. And for our example, we're going to use Katniss Everdeen from Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games. Katniss is thrust into this role. She is a survivor, and she's only willing to become part of the Hunger Games in order to save her sister. But throughout this, she becomes a sister to all. She's trying to survive, but she is fighting for all of us now. In the series as a whole, her character develops to the point where she becomes the person that saves the future and has the victory over the Capitol. The person at the end of the final Suzanne Collins series would not be capable of doing that unless she had gone through all those trials and tribulations. So that's her character arc. All right, we're going to break it down into the different acts. Act 1, again, intro to the character's world. Give a little insight into what they are missing, their internal goal. We have the external goal hinted at. Something happens and they react. And then finally, their choice starts them on the story's journey. I found this really cool Act 1 checklist from nofilmschool.com, and I think they had a lot of information in there that was helpful, but it is guided toward script writing, not book writing. Act 2 is half of your story. It's often broken down into two parts, Act 2A and Act 2B, because we like threes and we didn't want to call it a 4-act structure. We're so weird, aren't we? Act 2A is about 25 to 50% of the story. So it's a quarter of the story after Act 1. When we start Act 2A, we've got our first plot point. Plot points and pinch points are just things that happen in the story. These are major or somewhat major events that cause the characters to react. So we've got our decision made, she's going to the Capitol, and put in process, but there are obstacles. So for our Act 2A, Katniss Everdeen ends up going to train at the Capitol, doing all that crazy stuff. Then she is now in the Hunger Games. She is trying to hide out and survive, but there's antagonistic forces, the Capitol's being a douchebag, and forces her to move by starting a fire and forcing her close to the enemy. At the end of this Act 2A, there's a very low point for the character typically, but they can see who they could be if they were healed, like if their emotional baggage was taken care of. So at the end of, or the midpoint of this story, Peeta saves her life, and she realizes that she doesn't have to be just a survivor. She could be more than that. She gets a hint at it. Now we're going to go on to Act 2B. So Peeta has saved her life. Now she meets Rue. Rue helps her, and they become proactive. So when we get past the midpoint, your character is going to start kicking some butt. They're going to start making some moves. If you've got a murder mystery, they're hunting for clues and they're forcing the antagonist, the murder victim, out into the open. They're doing things proactively. At the pinch point, they make a plan to attack the other team, but then Rue gets injured. And finally, at the climax, Katniss vows to win for Rue. And we get an inkling that Katniss is moving from survivor mode to wanting to defeat the Capitol. All right, the third act, the end of our story. You've got the climax and the resolution. Remember, she fails. Then she gathers the troops, and then she tries again. So here we have Katniss saves Peeta, which I think is a beautiful, her midpoint is he saves her, so she saves him. And they start to play against the Capitol. She's now playing into this role that she and Peeta are in love, and they are in fact growing attached to one another. The Capitol changes the rules and says 2 people can win, right? So they put that in there. But then at the very end, the Capitol says, no, you can't. Only one person can survive. So Katniss, instead of allowing the Capitol to win, she changes the rules. And she and Peeta vow to commit suicide so that they both die. They are choosing victory, their own death, a victory over the Capitol. And what happens is the Capitol backs down. And now we end, and Katniss and Peeta are alive. Their new world is this kind of fake, weird, trying to fit into the Capitol's role, but at the same time, they are working to overcome. So that's the end of our story for the first book in the Hunger Games series. No Film School also has this Act 3 checklist, which I really think is useful. I will say they have one for Act 2, but again, it's for script writing, and it's a little bit more in-depth than my quick and easy, what is the 3-act structure? Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Please sign up for our newsletter at askigw.com. We have other free writer resources there, as well as workshops. We have paid workshops and retreats, so you can definitely learn more on our website. Check it out. And if you have any questions, go ahead and contact us at askigw@gmail.com. This is Tobi Doyle. Thanks so much for joining me.